Welcome and thank you for listening to the Sales Maven Show. I'm your host, Nikki Rausch, your own personal sales maven, here to offer you tips and strategies and techniques to master your sales conversation. Today, we're going to be talking about a new trend going on in the marketplace and why it's not actually working and why you want to avoid doing it. And it has to do with this trend is the compliment that's immediately followed by an insult to everyone else. So, we're going to talk about how this outreach trend is really hurting sales conversations. So, I don't know if you've received one of these messages, but they're prevalent. If you have guessed it on a podcast, if you have a podcast, you likely have received some version of this. The trend is it's a cold outreach. It sounds flattering at first, but then suddenly it insults a entire group of people. So the thing about outreach is for many of us, it's awkward. It can feel awkward. And because it already feels awkward, it starts to sometimes get in your head and you ask yourself like, "Oh, is this a normal like thing that's happening? Like, should I be doing this too because I'm getting all of these messages? Like, is this the thing that's working? Is this what's going to open the door?" But chances are it doesn't feel very good to you. And the thing about this particular trend, when you start questioning like, is this normal? That right there should be a red flag. But also, it's really, let's talk about today why this really breaks trust. And of course, what to do instead. I always like to give the what to do instead, right? Like, I'm not here to just bash. Well, I'm not here to bash at all, but well, maybe a little in this particular instance, but really having some idea of what would work. How can you use something that everybody else is using and tweak it and make it a version that can help. So the pattern is it starts with a compliment, then it pivots immediately to tearing down the everyone else. And I'm putting this in quotes like the everyone else. And the idea is that somehow it's supposed to elevate the reader and also the sender. It's like, oh, look at us. We're so superior, you and me. So it's this idea of like somehow this is going to create some intimacy, some connection between us that just does not exist. Because again, like I said, this is cold outreach. All right. So when I was preparing for doing this podcast, I pulled some statements right from actual messages that have been sent and received, all but one of them by me, but one was shared in the group by one of my society members, which then a few other society members said like, "Oh yeah, I got that exact same message too," right? So obviously somebody's targeting my podcast for this outreach. I'm sure they're targeting many people's, right? Not just me. I'm not special. I don't think I'm special. Um, but they're targeting this. And so people are getting these messages, right? So when I was pulling the actual like sentences to give you some examples, it didn't take me very long to do because frankly, I get these messages all the time. So whether you've been a podcaster or whether you've been a guest, chances are you're receiving these types of messages too. And it took me like a few minutes to put these examples together because I get these back to back, right? So like two of them were within 5 minutes of each other, two of the examples that I'm giving, and like this week. So, all right. So it wasn't hard to pull this content because this is happening and it's happening all over the place. All right. So here's the first one. This actually was sent to somebody who was guesting. And this is the sentence. I'm not going to read you the whole email, but I'm just pulling this example of the compliment with then the follow-up of the insult. So appreciate you actually giving value, unlike almost every other guest who just pitches their product or service the whole time. So the thing about this compliment is it's like it's got a real sting to the tail, right? Like, ow. And it pulls you into this comparison that you didn't even agree to be in. I love that one of the people in the society are I love my society members. They are really the best. If you're listening as a society member, know that I love you. You probably know that because I tell you all the time. But I love that one of my society members then posted, like, you should send back a message that essentially says, like, yeah, all of these people that you're comparing to happen to be colleagues and friends of mine. But I don't actually recommend responding to this message. I don't think you should reward bad behavior with attention. Um, when you don't want to have a relationship with somebody. So my kind of go-to is always like delete, block, ignore. You decide what works for you. But I do love that as members, they want to support each other and be like, yeah, you just insulted our like my friends. That doesn't feel good, right? Okay, so here's the next example. So these are all for the like when you're the host of the podcast. These are right for messages that were sent to me. Most hosts clearly wing it with generic questions they found on Google. Love that you actually care. So, this compliment that's followed by this blanket insult is like their version of trying to create intimacy with the reader. It's a tactic, it's not a connection. Creating intimacy is something that happens by making rapport deposits, by building relationship. It isn't something that can be manufactured. And it just kind of comes off like gross, right? Like maybe at first you think, oh, well, that's nice that they think that I prepare all of this. But then why does it have to insult other people? Like, why do you have to bring in this comparison again? Here's another one. Most lose me around the 20-minute mark when they start repeating themselves for the gazillionth time. Okay, so this is meant to make the reader feel like an exception, but really it's just undermining the sender's credibility, right? Like, eh, okay. And also, I think when somebody sends me this exact message, I've gotten it way more than once, probably more than 5 times. I've gotten this exact compliment. Again, I want to put this in quotes compliment. Um, I think, well, you must not listen to my podcast because I know I repeat myself. So already feels like you didn't even listen to an episode before you sent me this really tacky message. Okay, here's the last one. And then we're going to talk about some other points around this and what to do instead, of course. Love that you let people finish their thoughts instead of jumping in every 30 seconds, like almost every other show. So, when you're insulting an entire industry, in this case, podcasters, it really signals what type of person you are and how you talk about people when they leave the room or behind closed doors, or some would say behind their back, right? And I don't know, have you met somebody and they seem to like every single person, they have some snarky comment to make about them. But then to you, they have all these nice things to say. But do you start to wonder if you spend any time with somebody like that? I remember having somebody who I thought we were going to have a friendship, and then it became apparent that this was the pattern. And then I always started thinking, like, what is she saying about me to everybody else? Because I don't hear her say anything nice about anybody else. She says nice things to me that are flattering, which, I love a compliment. Don't get me wrong. I love a genuine, authentic compliment the most. Um, but yeah, it just makes you wonder, like, what's being said when you're not there, when you can't hear what are they saying about you? So, and again, because this message is like a generic, AI version, you got to imagine like you have been insulted. How many of these emails did they send out? Because every email they sent out that wasn't to you, you were a part of the industry. You were a part of the group. So you were being insulted way more than you were being complimented. Right. So it's just bad business, frankly. So anytime somebody starts using comparison as a way to elevate themselves or the other person, like the conversation stops feeling safe. And safety is paramount to earning somebody's business. It's one of the things that I teach as to why it's so important that you pre-frame at the start of your sales conversation is to create safety. Without it, people go into fight, flight, or freeze, right? So fight is they will want to be combative. They'll want to, prove you wrong in some way. Flight is they want to get out of the conversation as quickly as possible. And I'm going to say that's probably my style. That's probably how I show up with these kind of things because I don't engage. I just leave the room. I delete, I block. And then freeze is they just like have nothing to contribute to the conversation. So it's so important that you create safety. And when you are starting off a relationship where it already feels a little on shaky ground, so much harder to earn that person's business. Like it's not going to get you the result that you want. It also shows that this person relies on manipulation and not relationship. And, the thing about sales that gets a bad rap is anytime it feels manipulative, it's gross. So, sending somebody a compliment that is followed up by an insult to everybody else, it is manipulative and gross. So, like, there's just no reason to do this. Um, I've already addressed the fact that, like, when somebody is just throwing out casual insults to people, it does make you wonder, like, what are they saying when you're not there? And buyers really do shut down, and readers shut down, listeners shut down when it feels like the tactics are engineered. It feels like, oh, well, this is a tactic. This isn't genuine. And this is why I always say, like, relationship selling. I know people always think that this word authenticity is way overused, and it is because it's sometimes used as a tactic. But when you really are showing up from a genuine place and writing a message from a genuine place doesn't mean it's always going to land or that you won't make a misstep. You will, like I do, right? Like we all do. But starting from this place that feels like when the person already feels like they're being manipulative, like, or manipulated, I should say, it's just not going to work. So the idea here is when you're sending out these messages and they're just basically getting ignored. This is why I don't love the shotgun approach to sales. This is why I don't spend a ton of time teaching about cold outreach. This is why I would say, like, warm up your leads. And I teach strategies to warm up leads because these cold outreach messages just diminish credibility. It just feels gross. And it's getting easier, right? With AI. Like I get, pitched. I can't even tell you how many times a week about, like, I'm sure you do too. Like, oh, sign up for our program. We're going to pitch 50,000 people this month on working with you. And I just think, like, ew, those poor 50,000 people. Like, no, I'm not going to pay money for that. That feels yucky. Like there needs to be some connection, right? So, especially now, I think we're getting as a society, I mean, you tell me if this resonates with you. Like, are you starting to just go like, "Oh, is this AI?" Like, that's kind of one of our first thoughts, like, "Oh, is this AI? Is this AI generated? Is this AI?" Like, because now it's starting to get that negative connotation of like false, fake, manufactured, manipulative. And I'm not saying, like, don't use AI. Just to be really clear, I use it in my business. I think there are some real applications for it. But when you are manufacturing connection, when you are using it in this type of format, people go fake and we ignore it. It becomes an instant delete. The other thing too is anytime something becomes predictable, like, oh, I just got a compliment and it was followed by an insult, like that's becoming predictable now. Like you lose the attention of the reader or of the listener in that case, because it just like, oh, well, I always say when you're talking to everyone, you're talking to no one. Because when you just feel like I'm getting this message, like I'm sitting in a stadium of 50,000 people, they're not talking to me. like I don't feel connected at all to that message as the listener or as the reader in that moment. This is why, I don't ever recommend sending out messages that say like, "Hey everyone," or "You're all going to want to know this," because like I say over and over again, I don't know about you, but I had never sat around and read emails as a group. Like it just doesn't happen. I read my emails as an individual, and I mean, is that true for you too? Chances are it is. So when you talk to everyone in the same way, everybody stops listening because it's not personalized. None of us want to be treated like we're just a wallet or a dollar sign walking around on our forehead. And we're just like, again, back to the shotgun approach to sales, like I'm just going to spit out as much garbage as possible and see what sticks. It's like, well, I don't want to be the wall you stick to. Like, ugh, gross. Okay. So anytime you sound like everyone or when you sound like everyone else, it really is the fastest way for people to just go like, you're just noise. Like it's just noise. You're just saying the same thing that everybody else is saying. So cold outreach, by all means, if that is a part of your business building strategy, like I can help you with this. I can help you warm these cold outreaches up. We can work on messaging that feels connected, right? Okay, so I want to talk about what part of this message or this strategy that I think does have some value, and it's the compliment piece. Notice like, but leave off the insult to everyone else. I love a compliment, and I think a compliment is a very effective way of opening a door and starting to build relationship. Now, the thing about the compliment is it needs to be specific and it needs to be authentic. It needs to be genuine to that person. It can't be like, "You're great." That's not specific, right? But if you can give a clean compliment to somebody and leave off any comparisons, leave off any qualifiers to the compliment and just give the compliment, that has potential to open a door. Now, one of the things I used to do in my sales career is I did a ton of trade shows. You may have heard me talk about this before. I counted one year and I did 100 trade shows in one year, and that was a pretty typical year. So that's standing at a booth, people walking up and down the aisles, and the goal is to engage those people. And I found very early on in my career, like people, it's like they sometimes act like they're walking down the aisle, like, and they're in the middle of a Shark Tank and they're so worried that somebody's going to like pounce on them and like chew them up. And so what I found was the easiest way to slow somebody down as they were coming down the aisle was to give a genuine compliment. And I teach this still to this day. Anytime clients say to me, "Nikki, help me, I'm doing this trade show," this is one of the first strategies that I bring in. Now, I always say the compliment needs to be specific. It cannot just be like, "Well, you look nice." Ugh, that feels so gross to me. Like, you look nice. It's so generic. So it needs to be specific. And sometimes a specific compliment could be something like, "I really love the shape of your glasses." Or, look, obviously it's something that you see about this person. So compliment something about them, or like that color is very flattering with your skin tone. Like, I always say as a female, sometimes you have to be careful about giving compliments about the way someone looks when you're talking to the opposite sex, because they might think you're hitting on them. Believe me, I've been accused of that when it wasn't in fact true. I was working on the compliment. But so it takes a little bit of practice. So one of the things I used to do is, because I did all these trade shows, I also took a lot of flights. I used to take on average 120 flights every single year. And so one of the things that I would do when a plane would land and I would get off the plane, I always had to go to baggage claim because the technology that I was selling was big and bulky, and you always had to check it. Most like for a while, I always had to check in the oversized, bin. I had to go to the oversized baggage claim to get my gear to take to the presentation that I was giving. So I was always headed, get off the plane, head to baggage claim. And depending on the airport that I was landing in, sometimes there's small little regional airports, so it didn't take very long. Other times it took, it was quite a ways. But I would play this game with myself to build my compliment giving muscle. So I would get off the plane, and as soon as I would get out of the jetway, every single person that would cross paths, like they were going the opposite direction, I would try to come up with what would be a genuine compliment that I could give that person. And now I didn't actually say these out loud. I wasn't like trying to stop people in the airport, but I was just practicing for myself so that I could get good at giving genuine compliments. Like it was just a way to train my brain to think in that way. And so sometimes, there would be like thousands of people, it felt like that, you're crossing paths with. So I might not get to everybody, but, small regional airports, you might cross paths with, 20, 30, 40 people before you got to baggage claim. And so I had some time to think of a genuine compliment, but I always thought about it like with a trade show, they were coming down the aisle, just like at the airport, we were crossing paths, like they were coming towards me. So the idea was to think of what could be a genuine compliment that I could give here to this person that was specific to them. And I will say, this really did work. People would often slow down and be like, "Oh," and they would start to look in my booth and go like, "Well, what do you do? Like what are you selling, And then you could start a real conversation. And the other thing that I was known for at trade shows, especially early on in my career, is I actually sold product, like took orders on the show floor. The company that I was working for at the time, they had never had that happen before. And they were like the order processing department. This was back when you had to have an order processing department. They don't have those, I don't think, anymore in big companies because you can do everything like through your phone. You couldn't do it that way when I started in sales back in the late 1900s. But I would sell product on the floor, and that had just never happened before. And oftentimes it was just from starting a conversation where somebody would slow down and then go, "Oh, well, tell me more about what you do." And then we would get into a real conversation. And then, of course, I knew how to recognize buying signals. I knew how to issue close language. And so I would take orders on the floor. And then I would come back from the trade show, and my manager would call me into her office and be like, "You're really upset order processing, but good job, Nikki." Right? Like it was like, good job on actually closing that, $7,000 deal for a projector on a show floor, right? So this compliment thing, it works. You just have to use it effectively. The other thing about cold outreach to think about is that it should be direct. It should be really clear as to the purpose of the reach out. And I always like to talk about like your legitimate reason for reaching out needs to be about the reader or the buyer in this case, or the person that you're wanting to connect with. The reason for the reach out needs to benefit them in some way. It can't just be about you. Because, and I get these messages all the time like, "Hi, Nikki, I'm so and so, and this is all the things I've done and all the things I've accomplished. And I want to talk to your audience. I want to be on your podcast." It's like immediate delete. Like, that's not interesting to my audience. And it's not interesting to me as the reader either. Right. So also think about the relationship that you have with this person. When it's cold outreach, don't assume relationship. It feels gross, right? It's like somebody coming up to you at a bar and trying to pick you up, and you're like, "I'm just sitting here with my friends trying to enjoy a drink at the end of the day," or whatever it is that you're doing. But, it's like, ew. It feels like a yucky pickup line. Gross. So we don't want that. And then the other thing too, when these reach outs, like it is totally okay in a cold outreach to give them an opportunity to gracefully decline so that you do get some kind of a response back. Like I will reply often to a graceful decline versus like, "I just got this message the other day. Like, I would really appreciate it if you would let me know if you're interested in this thing that Now I'm adding some context here that I just put in your face 3 times without even your permission, right? Like that feels yucky, but there's a way to give people the opportunity to gracefully decline. So as always, I want to leave you with just an idea of how a message like this might work. Now, before I go through this message, I always want to say to you that if some part of it doesn't resonate with you, then come up with your own version, right? Like the idea isn't for you to use this verbatim, it's just to show you the structure of it. So if you like it, hey, give it a try. And if you some part of it doesn't quite feel authentic and genuine to you, then change it. All right, so here's the message. So you're going to put their name in there. Don't ever just say hi, right? Like make sure you include their name. So, hi Lucy. Your podcast continues to stand out because of your focus on, and then insert some type of thing here. So if they were sending it to me, they might say, your podcast continues to stand out because of your focus on connection between the buyer and the seller. That feels like a compliment, right? There's no comparison here. It's just talking about my podcast, right? Or the reader's podcast in this particular place. It's so appreciated how genuine your advice is and how easy it is to implement in a sales conversation. Okay, I know. It sounds like I'm trying to give myself a compliment here, but I'm really just trying to show you the structure. So you give some specific example about what it is that you appreciate about that person or about their podcast or about their business or whatever that compliment is that you're giving. Like give some context to it. I always say like put some meat on that bone, right? Like make it easy for the person to go like, oh, well, that feels nice, right? Like there's no comparison there. It's just a straight up, flat out compliment that is genuine to the reader. Okay. And then you're going to ask a question. Are you open to an idea I have for a conversation that supports your audience in, and then insert the context that applies to the topic that you're going to suggest? So in this case, maybe it's in marketing their business through LinkedIn. That's the question. Now, here's where you give the potential, like graceful decline. In case this isn't of interest to you, would you be willing to let me know one way or the other? Or you could just leave that first part off and say, would you be willing to let me know one way or the other? It's a question, right? It's simple. It doesn't immediately pitch. It's asking permission before the pitch. Let's see what happens, right? Like try something like that. I personally now this is what I teach, like that is going to resonate at a much deeper level than this new trend of compliment with an immediate insult to everyone else. So the other thing to think about with cold outreach is that every message you send really teaches people how to feel about you. So think about that before you're writing your message. Like, how do I really want this? Like, what would I want their takeaway to be? When I talk about the selling staircase and step one being introduction, and the objective there is to make a powerful, positive first impression. One of the things that I encourage people to think about is, when's the last time you thought about what is it like to be in a conversation with you? What's it like for the other person? What's it like for someone to get an email from you? How could that potentially land for them? And if you're not taking that stuff into consideration, then frankly, like halt doing cold outreach. Like this is something you should be taking into consideration first and foremost. What is it like for that person to interact with me? Because we're always thinking about ourselves, right? Like, oh, what are they going to think about me? But like in a way of to yourself, right? Like, I want them to think this about me and I want them to think that. Well, okay, but are you showing up in that way? Like, are you showing up as credible? Are you showing up as kind? Because if not, if you're showing up as abrasive, if you're showing up and breaking trust or manufacturing intimacy with somebody, like that's not going to leave them feeling safe. That doesn't come across kind, right? And then, remember that insults, even subtle ones, create distance. People like go, "Ooh, I don't know. I don't know what they're going to say about me when I'm not in the room." Clarity, respect, sincerity create safety. And safety leads to connection, and connection leads to conversation, and conversation leads to yeses in sales. All right. Thank you so much for listening, as always. And if this message resonated with you, would you be willing to share? Share the episode with somebody that you think might find some value in this, in how to do these cold outreaches, right? When an outreach and a sales conversation really feels natural and confident, like that's when things really start to happen. So I am wishing that for you. Confident and natural conversations with genuine connection so that you can easily guide somebody through the sales process with you and earn their business. All right. Thanks for listening. Have a great rest of your day.